I learned the truth about chaos on a night when everything went wrong at the same time. No warning, no rhythm, no mercy. We were moving through a narrow valley, moonless sky, visibility close to zero. My night vision flickered once, then died completely. Our comms crackled with broken intel that turned out to be flat out wrong. And then, because chaos likes to stack itself, my secondary gear snagged on exposed rock, jammed, and forced me to stop dead in the open. For a split second, I couldn't see, couldn't hear clearly, couldn't trust the information that was supposed to guide us. That kind of moment reveals exactly who you are, and it's when most people panic, but I didn't. Not because I'm fearless, not because I'm special. I stayed calm because I'd already learned the first rule of surviving chaos. Slow is smooth, and smooth is fast. If you rush, you die. If you panic, you make yourself blind. Panic is dangerous because it pulls your attention away from what matters and floods your system with emotion instead of logic. Your heart starts sprinting, your breath goes shallow, your brain hunts for quick answers that don't exist, and you lose the ability to make clean decisions. Panic feels fast, but it actually slows you down. It turns every small problem into a chain reaction. In that valley, I could feel the edge of panic trying to creep in, just like you feel it in everyday life when a conversation turns bad, when your phone rings with bad news, when something breaks at the worst possible moment. Chaos always chooses the moment when you're tired, distracted, or unprepared. But the principle stays the same. Panic is the real threat, not the situation itself. So I did the one thing I always do when it feels like the world is piling on top of me. I took control of my breath. Controlled breathing stabilizes your entire system faster than anything else. When you regulate your breath, you force your body to follow. Your heart rate drops, your vision widens again, your hearing sharpens. You pull yourself back into the role of the observer instead of the victim. One inhale through the nose, steady and deliberate. Hold. Slow exhale. When I breathe like that, everything inside me stops sprinting. My thoughts stop colliding, and my awareness comes back online. But here's the mistake most people make when everything goes wrong. They try to think fast. They believe speed will save them. If I can just figure everything out right now, I'll be fine. No. Fast thinking under panic is sloppy, emotional, and desperate. It makes you react instead of respond. Every error after that is multiplied. I've watched people, good people, spiral because they were trying to outrun the problem instead of taking control of their mind first. What I did in that valley, what I still do today, and what I teach everyone who asks how to stay calm when the walls are collapsing is simple. Shrink the battlefield to the next 10 seconds. Don't solve the whole situation. Don't fix everything at once. Don't imagine the worst possible outcome. Just take command of the next 10 seconds. That's it. My world became small on purpose. I only focused on what I could do in that tight window. Move my hand, clear the snag, regain stability, breathe again, 10 seconds at a time until clarity returned. Military psychologists found that the brain regains control fastest when attention narrows to one micro task. Not five, not all of them. One. That's why shrinking the battlefield works. It forces your brain to stop drowning and start choosing. And that night, 10 seconds at a time, the chaos stopped owning me. I moved smoothly, I cleared my gear, my vision adjusted, my thinking sharpened, and the mission continued. Chaos never comes announced. It storms in, uninvited, but calm isn't luck, it's a skill. And that skill begins the moment you decide to slow down, breathe, and own just the next 10 seconds. When things go wrong, the first enemy you face isn't the situation, it's your own mind. I learned that early in my SEAL career, long before I ever saw real combat. We were running a stress drill inside a kill house, a tight, confined structure designed to overwhelm your senses. Loud bangs, flashing lights, smoke, pure chaos. And even though I knew it was training, my brain reacted as if every one of those sounds was a real threat. That's what the mind does under pressure. It lies to you. It exaggerates danger. It whispers worst case scenarios. And if you don't know how to control it, it hijacks your decision making before you even realize what's happening. The amygdala, the fear center, doesn't wait for facts. It fires first and asks questions later. In that kill house, it convinced me that the moment was bigger than it actually was. My hands tightened, my breath shortened, my vision narrowed. That's the fear reflex kicking in, the same one people feel during a heated argument, a financial crisis, or a medical scare. Fear takes a tiny fire and convinces you the whole world is burning. And the danger is not the fear itself, it's the spiral that follows. When fear builds momentum, it multiplies. One small threat becomes five. One uncertainty turns into catastrophe. You can lose control of your mind long before you lose control of the situation. But here's the part most people never learn. You can override that hijack. You can interrupt the spiral, and it starts with something counterintuitive. You don't bury fear, you don't outrun it, you name it. In the kill house, when my mind started racing, I said out loud, loud noise, smoke, distraction. Just naming what was happening slowed everything down inside me. The brain can't stay in full panic mode when you force it to label the moment. That simple act pulls you out of emotion and back into awareness. There's research behind this. According to a Harvard stress study, labeling emotions reduces their intensity by up to 40%. 40%. That's not a small shift. That's the difference between being hijacked and being in control. When you name what scares you, the threat stops being a monster and becomes an object, something you can observe, something you can act on. Hope begins the moment the situation becomes manageable again. But here's the mistake most people make when they feel pressure closing in. They tell themselves, I need calm, I need calm. That phrase actually makes things worse. Why? Because it reinforces the idea that calm is something you don't currently have. It creates internal tension. You start judging your stress instead of managing it. You're telling yourself you're failing in the moment where you need confidence the most. The mind hears, I need calm, and interprets it as, I'm losing control. And that sends the spiral right back into motion. What you need isn't calm, you need direction. You need a command your mind can obey instantly, something simple enough to cut through noise, fear, and confusion. During missions, I used a trick that saved me more times than I can count. I gave myself a one-word command, not a sentence, not a motivational quote, not a plea, just a verb. Breathe, move, look, one command, one action, one step out of the spiral. When you shrink your focus to a verb, your brain stops imagining disasters and starts executing. Action dissolves anxiety. In the kill house, that one word, move, brought me back into the flow. My breath leveled out. My awareness widened. The panic dissolved because it had nothing left to feed on. And in the real world, the same principle applies. Whether you're facing conflict, uncertainty, or pure emotional overload, your mind will try to lie to you. It will tell you the threat is bigger than it is. It will push you toward desperation. But you're not powerless. Name the fear. Give yourself one command. Act on it. That's how you take back control of your mind. And once you have that, the chaos doesn't get to decide who you are. You do. There's a moment during chaos, so fast you almost miss it, when your body begins to betray you. Your hands stop cooperating, your thoughts scatter, your decision-making collapses into pure instinct and not the good kind, the kind that makes you freeze, hesitate, or rush into the wrong action. I've felt that shift more times than I can count, both in training and in real operations. 1 second you're in control, and the next your nervous system hijacks the entire mission. That loss of fine motor control isn't weakness, it's biology. When stress spikes, your body shuts down every function it considers non-essential, including your ability to think clearly. It's designed to survive, not to strategize. But here's the part that gives me hope, and the part I teach everyone who wants to stay calm when the world starts bending. You can take that control back in 5 seconds. 5 seconds is all it takes to reboot your system and bring your mind and body back online. The SEALs taught me this because we didn't have the luxury of thinking for a long time. We had seconds, sometimes less, to get ourselves under control before the situation decided the outcome for us. Physiological stress shuts down logic because your brain shifts into emergency mode. Blood flow leaves the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for rational thinking, and floods your limbs. Your breath shortens, your heart rate spikes, your hands shake, you lose dexterity. You're no longer a thinking human, you're a survival machine reacting to noise and shadows. That's why people say things in arguments they don't mean. That's why drivers freeze during accidents. That's why small problems feel like huge ones. The body has taken the wheel, and it's driving through fog. The way out isn't by telling yourself to calm down. The way out is through the body, using a pattern that speaks the language your nervous system understands. For me, and for countless operators I've trained alongside, that pattern is the 4-2-4 rhythm. Inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 2, exhale for 4. This rhythm resets the system like a circuit breaker. The inhale stabilizes your oxygen intake, the hold interrupts the panic loop, and the exhale lengthens your parasympathetic response, the part of your nervous system responsible for calm and clarity. When chaos hit in the field, that was my anchor. 4, 2, 4, 5 seconds, and my mind returned to me. But most people make a big mistake when they try to use breathing to calm down. They breathe too deep and too fast. The chest rises, the shoulders lift, the breath becomes loud and exaggerated. That isn't calming, it's hyperventilating. Hyperventilation tricks your body into thinking the threat is even bigger than it is. You feel lightheaded, your heart pounds harder, your hands tremble more. It's the opposite of grounding, and then you think the technique doesn't work, when in reality, you're using it the wrong way. The real trick, the one that works instantly, even under extreme pressure, is simple. Inhale through your nose and press your tongue lightly to the roof of your mouth. That combination does two things. First, nose breathing forces the breath to slow down naturally, filling the lower lungs instead of the upper chest. Second, pressing the tongue upward activates a subtle neurological signal that grounds your focus and reduces the urge to gasp. It's the fastest way I know to stop your system from spiraling, and it's so effective that Marine Corps instructors teach it to recruits during high-stress drills to prevent cognitive shutdown. They know that if a Marine loses his thinking ability, he becomes a liability. Same goes for SEAL. Same goes for a civilian in crisis. When I use this technique, everything aligns in seconds. Noise fades, vision clears, fine motor control returns. The frantic urge to react disappears. I regain the ability to choose, not just survive. And once you start choosing again, the chaos loses its advantage over you. 5 seconds, a breath pattern, a tongue placement, a reset. That's all it takes to reclaim your mind from panic. And once you master it, you stop being controlled by chaos. You begin controlling it. When chaos hits, most people don't realize that the real danger isn't the situation itself. It's the instinct to react before you think. Humans react, SEALs respond. That difference sounds small, almost like wordplay, but it's the line between staying alive and becoming part of the problem. I've seen it happen on missions, in training, and even in everyday life. One moment goes wrong, and suddenly people are scrambling, rushing, trying to fix everything at once, and that frantic momentum becomes its own kind of chaos. The situation doesn't spiral, they do. I remember a night operation where a teammate slipped on loose gravel. It wasn't catastrophic, not fatal, just a slip. But another guy heard the noise and reacted instantly, turning toward it too fast, raising his weapon, breaking formation. That single reaction threw off the spacing, which forced the man behind him to adjust, which forced the next guy to shift. In 5 seconds, one tiny mistake created a chain of disorder down the entire line. Not because of the original problem, but because someone reacted instead of responding. That's the chaos loop. One error triggers panic, panic triggers speed, and speed triggers more errors. Rushing under pressure is responsible for nearly 80% of avoidable mistakes. We learned that in training the hard way. When your heart is racing and your mind is scattered, your hands don't follow your intentions, you grab the wrong tool, you turn the wrong direction, you skip steps, you misjudge distance, your brain can't process information cleanly, so your body goes into full autopilot. And autopilot is almost always wrong when the stakes are high. People think moving fast will save them, but rushing is what multiplies the threat. The hope, though, is that the chaos loop isn't inevitable. There's a way to break it, and it's simpler than people expect. We had a principle in the teams that I now use in every part of life, the one calm decision rule. When everything feels like it's collapsing, you don't try to fix the entire situation. You don't solve 6 problems at once. You don't sprint. You make one calm decision, just one. And that single decision stabilizes everything around you. It restores order by creating a reference point. In that night operation, if the first guy had paused just half a second and made one calm decision instead of reacting, none of the dominoes would have fallen. Choosing one correct action stabilizes the environment because it gives your brain a clean direction to follow. Chaos amplifies when there are too many choices, too many impulses, too many imagined dangers firing at once. When you choose a single action, the noise quiets, the uncertainty shrinks, you regain awareness, you can see the next step. The mind works best when it's not juggling possibility, it's executing clarity. But most people make the same mistake under pressure. They multitask. They think the path out of chaos is to address everything at the same time. They answer the phone while rushing out the door, try to solve the argument while cooking dinner, attempt to handle the crisis before taking a breath. But multitasking is a myth. Under stress, multitasking becomes mistake stacking. That's why emergency responders train to do the opposite. They isolate tasks, they slow their internal tempo, and they execute one clean move at a time. A Japanese emergency response study found that single-task responders make 60% fewer errors in high-pressure events. 60%. That's not a small advantage, that's survival. The trick I used in the field, and the one I still use every time life throws a punch, is brutally simple. I ask myself one question: what's the one thing that keeps me alive for the next minute? That question cuts through panic like a blade. It silences the noise. It exposes the priority. In a firefight, that one thing might be finding cover. In a conversation, it might be listening instead of reacting. In an accident, it might be stopping your movement instead of adding more force. Once I find that one thing, everything slows down, my breathing levels, my thinking clears, and I act, not react. Chaos feeds on speed, but it collapses under clarity. If you can hold yourself to one calm decision in the middle of the storm, you break the loop, you regain control, and the situation bends back into something you can manage. The world may move fast, but you don't have to. Respond, don't react. That's how you prevent chaos from multiplying and how you keep yourself steady when everything else is shaking. I've seen a lot of dangerous things in my life, but nothing scares me more than a man who feels too confident in the middle of a chaotic situation. Confidence is useful until it becomes a blindfold, and in the field, a blindfold can kill you. I learned that lesson on a night when we were moving through a hostile zone, everything quiet, everything controlled, until one of my teammates decided he had the moment under control and broke protocol. He wasn't scared. He wasn't stressed. He wasn't overwhelmed. He was confident, too confident, and that made him dangerous. We were supposed to move in a tight diamond formation, every man covering a specific angle. It's a system built from thousands of repetitions, thousands of corrections, thousands of near mistakes, but confidence whispers lies. It tells you, you got this, no need to follow the boring rules. And that night, he listened. He drifted a few steps forward, just enough to break the shape. Maybe he thought he saw something, maybe he wanted a better angle, maybe he simply believed nothing would go wrong. But when he stepped out of alignment, he exposed our entire left side. A single misplaced foot put 5 men at risk. I remember looking at him through the darkness, my pulse suddenly spiking, not from fear of the enemy, but from fear of what his confidence could cost us. Overconfidence blinds your senses. It narrows your awareness. It convinces you that your emotions are reality, that your instinct is superior to your training. That is the most seductive and dangerous form of chaos, the kind that starts inside you. When you think you're untouchable, you stop paying attention to the details, and it's the details that keep you alive. What saved us that night wasn't luck, and it wasn't brute strength. It was the discipline of the men around him. Every SEAL relies on micro routines, tiny habits built under pressure, habits so ingrained that they take over even when your emotions want to pull you off track. Micro routines are the lifelines in chaos, checking your angle, confirming your spacing, monitoring your breathing, registering your teammate's position. It's boring work in a world that glamorizes spontaneity, but boring is what keeps you alive. The mistake most people make on the battlefield, in business, in relationships, is trusting their emotions instead of their protocol. Emotions scream for attention, especially when fear mixes with adrenaline or confidence mixes with ego. But emotions lie, protocol doesn't, your training doesn't. The systems you built when you were calm and rational are always more reliable than the impulses that fire when you're under stress. That overconfident teammate trusted his feeling over the structure that had been proven thousands of times, and that's how easy it is to create disaster. What pulled him back and pulled all of us back into alignment was something we were trained to use even in the most chaotic environments, the Q word. SEAL Q word training is one of the simplest and most powerful tools we have. Each man chooses a word that snaps him instantly back into discipline. One word that cuts through adrenaline, ego, panic, or overconfidence. One word that returns you to awareness. That night, I whispered his Q word, sharp, low, controlled, and I watched him freeze for half a second, breathe, and slide back into formation like he'd just woken up from a dream. It didn't take a lecture or a shout, just the word. There's science behind this. Researchers discovered that pilots with Q word habits make faster, cleaner decisions under turbulence because the word triggers a neurological reset. It forces the mind to stop drifting into emotion and return to process. And in chaos, process is power. That quick reset kept us alive, and it taught me something I still repeat today. Calm is not confidence. Calm is awareness. Confidence without awareness is a weapon pointing the wrong direction. Years later, outside the military, I still see the same pattern. People trust the high of confidence and ignore the quiet signals that warn them something's off. They speed through problems, they skip checks, they assume everything will be fine because it was fine last time. But chaos doesn't care about your confidence. It cares about your awareness. It cares about your discipline. It cares about whether, in the moment where everything is at stake, you choose protocol over emotion, clarity over impulse, and discipline over pride. The night my teammate drifted off course is burned into my memory, not because of how dangerous it was, but because of how easily it could have turned tragic. All it took to reverse the spiral was awareness, routine, and one quiet word. And sometimes that's all that separates you from disaster, the ability to snap back into discipline before confidence becomes carelessness. People hear the word chaos and think of combat zones, explosions, and missions in the dead of night. But the truth is, the same pattern shows up in everyday life. You don't need to be in a war zone for everything to fall apart at once. It happens in living rooms, offices, hospitals, freeways. I've watched people crumble under job pressure, fall apart during an argument, or freeze when they get unexpected news. Their world collapses the same way mine did on missions, suddenly, violently, without permission. Chaos doesn't care who you are, it shows up uninvited, and it exposes the cracks in your training. I've seen civilians break under the weight of stress not because the situation was impossible, but because their mind shifted into emotional reaction instead of controlled response. When you react emotionally, you damage things you never intended to damage: relationships, trust, clarity, opportunities. A conversation spirals into a fight because someone speaks too fast. A small mistake at work turns into a crisis because a manager reacts with anger. A family argument explodes because someone lets fear speak for them. Emotional reactions are like throwing gasoline onto a match. They make everything louder, hotter, and harder to control. And once the fire spreads, you can't take those words or actions back. But here's the hope: you don't need to be a Navy SEAL to stay calm when life hits you. You can apply the same formula we used in high pressure environments directly into your everyday routine. Calm is not a luxury, it's a skill. And like any skill, it can be trained, sharpened, and deployed when you need it the most. The same tools I used in missions are the same tools I use now when traffic is backed up, or a conversation starts heating, or life blindsides me with something I didn't expect. One of the most powerful ways to build this kind of calm is the 90-second drill. You set aside just a minute and a half every day to train your nervous system the way we trained ours. You slow your breath, you ground your body, you bring your awareness into the moment. It doesn't sound dramatic, but those 90 seconds reshape the way your brain handles stress. You're teaching your system to return to equilibrium fast, just like we had to in the field. And the more consistent you are, the faster your body responds during real pressure. Most people think calmness is a personality trait. He's just a calm person. She's naturally collected. No, calmness is not genetics. It's not luck. It's trained behavior. When someone stays steady during chaos, it's because they've rehearsed that response consciously or unconsciously over and over again. The biggest mistake people make is believing they can't improve their response to stress, that they're stuck with the way they currently react. They think panic is just who they are. They think anger is just their style. They think fear is their wiring. But that's not true. Your nervous system is adaptable, your mind is trainable, and your calm is built the same way your strength is built, through repetitions. You don't become steady by accident, you become steady by design. One of the tools I rely on the most, and the one I give to everyone who asks how to keep their head when life is falling apart, is the 10-second rule. It's simple but unbelievably powerful. Pause, breathe, decide, execute. 10 seconds. That's all you need to intercept chaos before it hijacks you. In those 10 seconds, you stop the emotional wave from crashing. You interrupt the reflex. You force yourself into awareness, and awareness is the birthplace of control. Stanford neuroscientists discovered that just 10 seconds of controlled breathing changes your stress chemistry. 10 seconds. That's enough to lower your heart rate, calm your amygdala, and bring your thinking brain back online. You don't need an hour. You don't need meditation music. You don't need a dark room or a retreat in the mountains. You just need a moment, one small moment where you choose to lead instead of react. When civilians use this rule, their lives start to change. Arguments de-escalate, decisions become cleaner, problems shrink instead of multiplying. They stop saying things they regret. They stop rushing into mistakes. They stop letting stress dictate their actions. What they gain is clarity, steadiness, and the ability to walk through pressure with control instead of being crushed by it. I've lived through nights where chaos tried to swallow me whole, where every second was a test of whether I would panic or lead. And the truth I learned out there is the same truth I teach now. Chaos doesn't break you. It reveals whether you trained or panicked. And once you understand that, once you practice that, chaos stops being the enemy. It becomes the moment where you find out who you really are.